Her touch could shatter me, so why did I let her in? The stellar prisoner. The first thing Leora Nakano noticed about her cell was that it was perfectly circular. No corners, no edges, just a seamless dome of polished cobalt alloy that reflected her image from every angle. She ran her hand along the wall, feeling its cool, uninterrupted surface. Designed to keep your frequency contained, a voice announced through hidden speakers. Leora turned toward the sound, tucking a strand of dark hair behind her ear. My frequency isn't contagious, Director Burke. Your scientists have that wrong. A hidden door slid open in the seamless wall, and Commander Thaddeus Burke stepped inside. He stood rigid in his midnight blue uniform, hands clasped behind his back. His face was all sharp angles, cheekbones that could cut glass, a jaw perpetually clenched, silver eyes that seemed to calculate rather than see. Your trial begins in 30 minutes, he said, his voice as emotionless as his eyes. Sabotage of Meridian Station's main reactor. The evidence is conclusive. Leora crossed her arms. I'm an astronavigator, not a saboteur. I map stellar formations, I don't blow them up. The security footage shows you entering the restricted area 17 minutes before the explosion. Your credentials were used to access the control panel. I was in the observatory recalibrating the mapping arrays. Anyone on this station can verify that. Burke's expression didn't change. The hearing is ceremonial. Your guilt has been determined. And my punishment? Leora asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Frequency extraction. The words hit her like ice water. Frequency extraction wasn't just execution, it was obliteration. The complete removal of a person's unique neural pattern, leaving nothing but an empty shell. That's barbaric, she whispered. It's efficient, Burke replied. Your destructive frequency will be isolated and studied. The rest of you is irrelevant. Leora stepped closer to him, noting how he instinctively backed away. Everyone on Meridian Station knew about her condition, how her neural patterns operated at a frequency that disrupted electronics and, according to rumors, affected people who spent too much time near her. You're making a mistake, she said. I was framed. Someone copied my credentials, planted that footage. Burke's silver eyes narrowed slightly. The Directorate doesn't make mistakes. Then why am I still in here talking to you? If you're so certain, why not extract my frequency now? A flicker of something, curiosity perhaps, crossed Burke's face. Protocol requires a formal hearing. Leora laughed, a sound that seemed to bounce oddly off the curved walls. The mighty Thaddeus Burke, following protocol to the letter. Tell me, Director, have you ever questioned an order? Ever felt anything at all? His expression hardened. Emotion is inefficient. It clouds judgment. It also makes us human, Leora countered. The hearing begins in 23 minutes. A guard will escort you. Burke turned to leave. Wait, Leora called. You haven't answered my question. Why come here yourself? Directors don't typically deliver hearing notices personally. Burke paused at the threshold. Your case is unusual. Your sabotage targeted systems that had no strategic value. The damage pattern was erratic, almost emotional. Because it wasn't sabotage. It was a message. That caught his attention. He turned back. Explain. Leora hesitated. Telling him the truth might be her only chance, but it could also accelerate her execution. I discovered something in the star maps. Patterns that shouldn't be there. Artificial structures hidden in the Barrow Nebula. Impossible. The nebula is uninhabitable. Not for whoever built those structures. They're massive, Director. City-sized. And they're emitting signals on frequencies similar to mine. Burke's analytical eyes studied her. You expect me to believe alien structures are communicating on your neural frequency? Not alien. Human. Advanced human. I think they're what's left of the Exodus ships that disappeared 80 years ago. They've evolved somehow. The director's face remained impassive, but Leora noticed his fingers twitch, the first involuntary movement she'd seen from him. Your hearing begins in 20 minutes, he said, turning to leave again. Save your theories for the tribunal. The hearing was exactly as Leora expected, a formality. 5 directorate members in identical midnight blue uniforms sat at an elevated platform, their faces as expressionless as Burke's. The evidence against her played on massive screens, security footage showing someone with her face and uniform entering the reactor control room, log entries with her credentials, damage assessments from the explosion. Leora stood alone on a circular platform, hands bound by energy restraints. The accused may speak, announced the lead director, a woman with silver streaks in her black hair. The footage is fabricated, Leora stated clearly. My credentials were duplicated. I was in the observatory during the explosion, recalibrating the stellar mapping arrays to better track the signals from the Barrow Nebula. A murmur rippled through the small audience, mostly security personnel and a few scientists. What signals? The lead director asked. Before Leora could answer, Burke stepped forward. The accused has developed a theory about communications from the Exodus ships. It's delusional. Her proximity to the reactor likely exposed her to radiation that affected her already unstable neural patterns. My neural patterns were stable until you started experimenting on me, Leora shot back. 3 weeks ago, I discovered the structures in the nebula. 2 days later, I was quarantined for anomalous frequency emissions. Convenient timing, wouldn't you say? The lead director's eyes narrowed. Director Burke, is this true? Burke's face remained composed. The accused was quarantined after routine neural scans detected potentially harmful frequency anomalies. Her discovery in the nebula, if it exists at all, is unrelated. Then let me show you the mapping data, Leora insisted. Let me prove what I found. The data has been reviewed and dismissed as corrupted, Burke stated. No structures exist in the Barrow Nebula. The lead director nodded. The evidence against Leora Nakano is conclusive. Her actions endangered this station and its personnel. The sentence is frequency extraction, to be carried out immediately. Leora's heart pounded. You're making a mistake. The signal I found, it's trying to communicate with us. With me specifically. My frequency isn't an anomaly, it's a receiver. Burke stepped closer to her platform. Enough. Your delusions end here. As guards moved to take her away, Leora looked directly at Burke. You felt it when you came to my cell, didn't you? That's why you came personally. Something's happening to you. For the briefest moment, Burke's composure slipped. His hand moved to his temple, where a small vein pulsed visibly. Take her to the extraction chamber, he ordered, his voice slightly strained. The extraction chamber was smaller than Leora expected. A single chair stood in the center, surrounded by equipment she recognized from her days studying theoretical physics, quantum resonators, neural mapping arrays, and most ominously, a containment field generator. The technicians secured her to the chair, attaching sensors to her temples and wrists. One of them, a young woman with copper-colored hair, avoided meeting Leora's eyes. This isn't right, Leora said quietly. You know it isn't. The technician didn't respond, continuing her preparations. The door slid open, and Burke entered. He'd changed from his formal uniform to a simpler one, black with silver trim. He dismissed the technicians with a gesture. When they were alone, he approached Leora, studying her with those calculating silver eyes. You said I felt something, he stated. Explain. Leora looked up at him. Your head hurts. You're having thoughts you can't control. Feelings you've never experienced before. It started after you visited my cell. Burke's expression remained neutral, but his posture had changed, slightly less rigid, as if maintaining his usual stance required effort. "What did you do to me?" he asked. "Nothing you didn't allow," Leora replied. "My frequency doesn't just disrupt electronics. It disrupts neural suppressors too. The Directorate's been suppressing emotions in its officers for decades, haven't they? Keeping you all coldly efficient." Burke's hand moved to his temple again. "If what you're saying is true, you've compromised a station director. That alone justifies execution." "Or it justifies listening to me," Leora countered. "The structures in the nebula are broadcasting on this frequency deliberately. They're trying to wake people up, literally. And the Directorate is terrified of that." "Why would they?" Burke stopped mid-sentence, his brow furrowing in what appeared to be pain. "Because," Leora continued, "an emotionless population is easier to control. The Exodus ships left to escape exactly this kind of manipulation. And now they've found a way to counter it." Burke's breathing had become slightly irregular. "The extraction will begin shortly. Your theories die with you." As he turned to leave, Leora called after him. "Check the observatory archives. The original data is still there if you know where to look. See for yourself before you erase me." The door slid shut behind him, leaving Leora alone with the extraction equipment. She pulled against her restraints, knowing it was futile. Hours passed. The extraction technicians didn't return. Something was wrong, or perhaps very right. Finally, the door slid open again. It was Burke. His uniform was disheveled, his silver eyes wide and unfocused. A thin sheen of sweat covered his forehead. "I checked the archives," he said, his voice different somehow, less mechanical, more human. "I found your mapping data. The structures are real." Leora felt a surge of hope. "And the signals?" Burke moved to release her restraints, his hands trembling slightly. "They match your neural frequency exactly. But that's not all." He looked up, meeting her eyes with an expression she never thought she'd see on his face, fear. "The extraction chamber has been compromised," he said. "Someone sabotaged it. The real saboteur is still active on this station." As Leora's restraints fell away, Burke stepped back, visibly struggling with something internal. "What's happening to me?" he whispered. "You're feeling," Leora said simply. "Maybe for the first time in your life. And now you have a choice to make. Frequency of freedom." The corridor outside the extraction chamber was eerily quiet. Burke led the way, moving with none of his usual mechanical precision. His steps were uneven, his breathing ragged. "The security systems are down in this sector," he explained, checking a small handheld scanner. "That's convenient." Leora followed closely behind him. "Or deliberate. Where are we going?" "Somewhere secure. My private quarters." "We need to." Burke suddenly stopped, pressing his palm against the wall to steady himself. "Another wave?" Leora asked. He nodded, jaw clenched. "It's like tides. Emotions coming in waves. How do people function like this?" "Practice," Leora said. "Most people learn to process feelings gradually, from childhood. You're getting decades of suppressed emotions all at once." They continued through the labyrinthine corridors of Meridian Station, avoiding the main thoroughfares. The station's architecture reflected its purpose, all clean lines and cold efficiency, with not a single decorative element to be found. Burke's quarters were surprisingly austere, even by Directorate standards. A single room with a bed, a desk, and a viewport revealing the swirling purple and blue gases of the Barrow Nebula. "Show me the data again," Leora insisted once the door was secured. Burke activated a holographic display. The nebula appeared in miniature, suspended in the air between them. He manipulated the controls, enhancing certain areas, applying filters to reveal what standard scans couldn't detect. And there they were, massive geometric structures, kilometers in length, hidden within the densest parts of the nebula. They pulsed with energy that matched Leora's neural frequency exactly. "There are hundreds of them," Burke whispered, his voice tinged with awe, another new emotion for him. "How did I not see this before?" "Because you weren't looking," Leora replied. "Or because you were conditioned not to see it." Burke ran a hand through his silver-streaked hair, a surprisingly human gesture. "The Directorate has always maintained that the Exodus ships were destroyed. That their mission to find a new way of living was a failure." "Clearly, they lied," Leora said, pointing to the structures. "The Exodus colonists survived. And they've evolved. They're broadcasting their neural patterns, free, unsuppressed emotional patterns, back to us." Burke's hand moved to his temple again. "And you're what, receiver? Naturally tuned to their frequency?" "I think so. My grandmother was one of the few who returned from the Exodus mission. She never spoke about what happened, but she was different. The Directorate kept her under observation her entire life." A chime sounded from Burke's communication device. He checked it, his expression darkening. "They've issued an order for both our arrests. Directorate security is locking down the station." Leora moved to the viewport, gazing at the nebula. "We need to broadcast back. Let them know we've received their signal." "With what?" "Every communication array on this station is controlled by the Directorate." "Not every array," Leora smiled. "The stellar mapping equipment in the observatory. It's designed to both receive and transmit. We could reconfigure it." Burke looked at her with newfound respect. "That's actually brilliant." A loud bang shook the door to Burke's quarters. "Security override in progress," announced the station's AI. "Too late," Burke muttered, drawing a standard-issue pulse pistol from a hidden compartment in his desk. The door slid open, but instead of security forces, a single figure entered. It was the copper-haired technician from the extraction chamber. "Director Burke, Astronavigator Nakano," she said quickly, "I'm Freya Ortiz. I'm with the Resonance Collective. We need to move now." Burke aimed his weapon at her. "The Resonance Collective is a myth. A boogeyman the Directorate uses to justify security protocols." Freya raised her hands. "Then why did I just override your door security to warn you? The Collective is real. We're descendants of the original Exodus crew members who stayed behind. We've been working inside the Directorate for generations." "Prove it," Leora demanded. Freya pulled back her sleeve, revealing a small implant on her wrist. "This blocks the neural suppressors the Directorate puts in our food. We've been awake while everyone else sleeps through their lives." More banging sounds echoed from the corridor. "Real security this time." "We need to get to the observatory," Leora insisted. Freya nodded. "We can help with that. But there's something you should know first. The sabotage, it wasn't random. We damaged specific systems to prevent the Directorate from blocking the incoming signals from the nebula." "You framed me," Leora realized. "We needed someone who could naturally receive the signals. When our scanners detected your frequency, we knew you were our best chance." Burke lowered his weapon. "This is treason." "Yes," Freya agreed. "Are you with us, Director?" Burke looked at Leora, then back at Freya. The conflict was evident on his face, decades of conditioning battling against newly awakened emotions. "The observatory," he finally said. "Let's go." They moved through maintenance shafts and emergency corridors, guided by Freya's intimate knowledge of the station's layout. Along the way, they encountered other members of the Resonance Collective, technicians, security personnel, even a few junior directors, all wearing the same wrist implants. "How many of you are there?" Leora asked as they crawled through a narrow service tunnel. "Enough," Freya replied. "We've been planning this for years. The signals from the nebula have been getting stronger. It's time." The observatory was in lockdown when they arrived, but Burke's override code still worked. Inside, the massive dome offered a perfect view of the nebula, while advanced equipment lined the walls. "I need to reconfigure the main array," Leora explained, moving quickly to the central control console. "If I can reverse engineer the signal, we can broadcast back to them." Burke secured the door while Freya and two other collective members took up positions at different workstations. "We're receiving reports of strange behavior throughout the station," one of them reported. "People are removing their neural regulators. Some are experiencing emotions for the first time." Burke nodded grimly. "The signal is spreading." Leora's fingers flew over the controls, making adjustments, aligning frequencies. "I need more power. The standard array won't reach the nebula." "Reroute from life support," Burke suggested. "Not enough to endanger anyone, but enough to boost your signal." Leora looked up at him in surprise. "That's against about 12 different Directorate protocols." A hint of a smile touched Burke's lips. "I'm feeling rebellious today." As they worked, the door to the observatory began to glow red as security forces attempted to cut through. "They're coming through," Freya warned. "We don't have much time." Leora finished her adjustments. "It's ready. I've matched my own neural frequency. When I activate this, it will broadcast my pattern, and by extension, the signal from the nebula, to every neural regulator on the station." Burke moved to stand beside her. "And what happens then?" "I don't know," Leora admitted. "But I think it's what the Exodus colonists intended. A cascade effect. Freedom spreading person by person. The door's integrity failed by another 10%. The security forces would be through in minutes." "Do it," Burke said. Leora activated the array. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then a wave of energy pulsed from the equipment, invisible but felt by everyone in the room. Leora gasped as her own frequency was amplified, resonating with the signals from the nebula. Burke dropped to his knees, overwhelmed by the intensity of the connection. Around them, the other collective members responded similarly, some crying, some laughing, all experiencing something profound. The cutting stopped at the door. Then, unexpectedly, it slid open. Security forces stood in the doorway, but they weren't advancing. Their weapons hung at their sides, their expressions confused and wondering as the wave of emotional freedom washed over them. "It's working," Freya whispered. From the nebula, new signals began to arrive, stronger, clearer. The holographic display activated automatically, showing the structures with new clarity. They weren't just cities, they were ships, massive generation ships that had evolved over decades into something new. And they were moving. Slowly, deliberately, toward Meridian Station. "They're coming home," Leora realized. Burke stood shakily, looking out at the nebula with new eyes. "What happens now? To the station? To the Directorate?" "Now," Leora said, taking his hand, "we learn to feel again. All of us." The security forces began removing their neural regulators, dropping them to the floor. Throughout the station, similar scenes played out as people awakened to their own emotions, their own humanity, for the first time in generations. In the center of the observatory, Leora and Burke watched as the structures in the nebula grew more distinct, humanity's lost children returning to help their cousins break free from emotional bondage. "It wasn't your frequency that was dangerous," Burke said quietly. "It was what it represented. Freedom. Choice." Leora nodded. "The most contagious things of all." As the first of the Exodus ships emerged from the nebula's edge, glowing with energies that science couldn't yet explain, Burke turned to Leora. "I'm feeling something new," he said, his voice uncertain. "Not pain, not confusion. Something hopeful." "That's the thing about feelings," Leora replied, watching as more ships appeared from the swirling gases. "They're always changing. Always evolving. Just like us." The Meridian Station's communication system suddenly activated, broadcasting a message to every corner of the installation. A voice, somehow both alien and familiar, spoke words that resonated with their newly awakened hearts. We who left to find freedom have returned to offer it. Join us in the space between stars, where minds and hearts roam free. And as the message concluded, Burke looked at Leora with eyes that now saw truly for the first time. "I choose freedom," he said simply. "So do I," she replied, as the first of the Exodus ships docked with Meridian Station, beginning a reunion 80 years in the making. Re-Triclaude can make mistakes. Please double-check responses.